And here we go. Hey, how you doing, everybody? It's your old pal, Sam. Hey, look, I just want to say, I know this was supposed to come out like weeks ago at this point, all right? We're like super behind. And I get it. I get it. And I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, with the utmost sincerity, it was 100% all Laura's fault. There, I said it. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes she just drops the ball. What are you gonna do? You can't trust people. I can't do it. Look, it's not her fault. All right, it wasn't her fault. Okay, look. October's a busy time for us cryptids. All right, we got stuff going on. We're making videos that nobody watches, or we're making other content that nobody looks at. But we're doing stuff. We're movers. We're shakers. Whatever the hell that means. Whatever. The point is this, guys. The point is this. Here it is, right now, ready for you. Episode 5. Are you serious? We've only done 5 episodes of this son of a bitch? That's it? Jesus Christ. Okay, here it is, episode 5. The Van Meter Visitor. With no further ado, hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope it's worth the wait. I know it's not, but whatever. Here we go.
In the heartland of Iowa, nestled along the meandering Raccoon River, lies a town steeped in triumph and terror, Van Meter. Officially incorporated in 1877, this quaint hamlet of 1,484 souls finds its home in the embrace of Dallas County, a mere stone's throw away from the state's capital city of Des Moines. While tiny, Van Meter is not without its claim to fame, for it is the birthplace of legendary pitcher Robert William Andrew Feller, a.k.a. the Heater, from Van Meter. Bob Feller's prowess on the pitcher's mound as part of the Cleveland Indians for an astonishing 18 seasons would come to define an era. A career that ultimately culminated in his official retirement on December 28, 1956, and his induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yet, the Chronicles of Van Meter would not be complete without mentioning another legendary figure that once called the tiny town home. A figure that predates the famed Feller's birth in 1918 by 1.5 decades. It is a tale whispered in hushed tones of winged apparitions and creatures born of cold dust and shadow. A tale of an unearthly abomination that clawed its way out of an abandoned mine only to weave itself into the very fabric of the citizens of Van Meter's nightmares. History is rife with tales of the inexplicable and the unknown. Stories so bizarre, they send the fingers of doubt creeping into the recesses of our very minds. Join us as we investigate.
This week in Creepy History.
Hi, I'm Laura Kram, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 5 of the Creepy Acres podcast. This week in Creepy History. And with me, as always, is my Bigfoot co-host, Sam Squatch. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Laura, how you doing?
Good. We were just together for the weekend.
Oh, my God, yeah. At the Van Meter Visitor Festival. It was awesome. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People think that we see each other all the time, but we don't. And it makes me sad. But when we do get to hang out, it's so much fun.
Yes, we make our absolute best of it. It was such a great time. You know what? I got to admit, I kind of miss you when we're not together.
Aww.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we get to talk like this, but it's so different when we get to see each other in person.
Yeah.
It was a good time. Yeah.
Some say swell.
Yeah. I mean, granted, The Airbnb we were all staying at, that place was haunted as shit. Oh my God.
Yeah, we stayed at a 1920s farmhouse, which totally had Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes.
It was like total wrong turn Texas Chainsaw shit. It was a nightmare.
Down like a 3-mile dirt road, no reception. We're all on like SOS on our phones, but
SOS and SOL. Yeah, it was a goddamn nightmare.
But know what? We made it out alive.
Yeah, barely.
You did. You know, we hung out with some friends like Lisa Russell and Cryptid Clyde.
We got to see David Weatherly and his wife. They were awesome. I love those guys. Yep. And Ben from the Hodag store.
Yes. You nearly pushed me over to get closer to Sarah Cooper from the Snallygaster Museum.
Oh, God, absolutely. Yeah, but that had to be done. Sacrifices had to be made, Laura.
You trampled over me. You gave me a bruise on my arm.
Yes.
You know, I was just on the floor. No big deal.
But, hey, you know what? I'm sorry that you got in my way. But if you get between me and a goal, that shit happens. Look, it was a great time. Stop trying to bring me down.
All right.
Look, and honestly, we're forgetting so many people. I mean, I just look off the top of my head, Jeremiah Byron from the Bigfoot Society podcast, Nash Hoover from Chasing Legends. Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, we're MetaZoo. We forgot MetaZoo.
Oh.
The Midnight Squatchers.
And
there's so many people, and of course Rachel, who set the whole thing up. There are so many awesome people at this thing.
I love seeing all our friends.
Yeah.
And new friends.
What?
We got to meet Steve Berg.
Oh, yes! And Steve Berg! Oh, my God, that guy.
Funny.
Yeah.
He's funnier than you.
Well, hold on now. Let's not get nuts, all right? Anytime a guy starts talking about egregore and, like, tulpas, I'm like, oh, shit. This guy's in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah,
he's way in there.
No floaties.
High strangeness indeed, yeah.
You know who else we got to hang out with this weekend? Our good friend, Steve Ward, was there, but also Chad Lewis, of course, and Kevin Lee Nelson. So the Van Meter visitor, Kevin, is actually the one that named it that. So that was really cool.
That's pretty sweet. That is pretty. You know what? Not a lot of people know that.
Right. Everyone thinks it's Chad.
Yeah, they all think it's Chad, but it's like, you know what? It wasn't. It was Kevin. And that right there is enough reason for me to scream, "Run!" at Chad Lewis. Run!
You did.
I did.
During the VIP walk, and everyone looked at you.
Yeah.
I was hiding. No one knew what you're talking about.
No, they didn't, but I knew. And Chad Lewis knew. He looked right at me. And that's probably why he called the cops on me and Chad David, the Creepy Acres Chad, that guy. But whatever. I don't care.
Anyways, let's learn about the Van Meter story, and let's turn it over to Nathaniel Leonards.
At the turn of the last century, with settlers pressing ever westward across the continually expanding United States, Van Meter, Iowa, is quickly growing into a prosperous community, thanks in part to the bustling railroad traffic spurred on by the success of the J.L. Platt coal mine, located just outside of town. Credited as one of the very first deep mines in the United States, it is looked upon as a marvel of efficiency and success. In fact, by the time the mine shut down due to workers' disputes, nearly 1,000 citizens called Van Meter home. Thankfully, by the time the mine was shuttered for good, the owners had already founded the Van Meter Tile and Brick Factory, located on the same grounds as their mine. The factory owners continued to employ numerous Van Meter residents, and the town continued to grow. Soon, enterprising young souls looking to strike out on their own and make a name for themselves flocked to the area, opening shops and services to cater to the town and its growing population. Among these young professionals is Harry H. Phillips, who, in 1901, would become Van Meter's postmaster. And it is while in this position that numerous newspapers, including the October 4th, 1903 edition of the Des Moines Daily News, would publish a story by Phillips recounting one of the most bizarre and mysterious tales to ever come out of the Hawkeye State. September 29th, 1903. It is 1 a.m. when Ulysses Grant Griffith, age 35, finally reaches the tiny town he calls home, Van Meter, Iowa. It is here, only 2 years prior, that he and his brother David formed their own business, selling farm implements, seed, and vehicles. Griffith Brothers Implement. As Ulysses makes his way through the silent streets of the sleeping city, something catches his eye. There, atop the Mathers and Gregg building, a store located in the downtown area, he spots a single, solitary, glowing light. Griffith is confused as he knows there simply is no such light in that location. And as he racks his brain, trying to speculate the possibilities, a troubling thought crosses the man's mind. Perhaps the phantom light is the lamp of a would-be thief. Confronting criminals in the dark of night is a dangerous gamble, and surely not one the simple implement dealer was eager to make. Luckily, he wouldn't have to. For as the man drew closer, the light moved impossibly to the roof of the building across the street. Now, thoroughly confused, Griffith ponders how the light could travel in such a manner, and then, as if to mock his concern, the light simply winks out entirely.
Well, best head home. Come on, girls, head home. Come on. Go.
Eugene Griffith eventually makes it to the comfort of his own bed and drifts off to slumber. And after awaking later that day, he would share his strange sighting with a few friends, but more than likely plan to forget the entire matter. But that's the funny thing about life. It cares nothing about our plans. For a mere 24 hours later, the story of the mysterious light would continue in the most spectacular fashion. September 30th, 1 a.m. Van Meter's town physician, Dr. Fred Alcott, age 25, is sleeping in the back room of his downtown medical practice, when suddenly he is jolted awake by a brilliant light shining directly in his face. As the man snaps to consciousness, he realizes that what has roused him from his slumber is in fact a single shaft of light beaming in through a nearby window. Alcott, like Griffith the night before, believes he is dealing with a thief. Grabbing what one source describes as a, quote, gun of immense proportions, end quote, Alcott charges outside to confront the prowler. But what he finds waiting instead is an unimaginable horror. Once outside, the good doctor is met again with the blinding light, but through the glare, you can see behind it stands the shape of something utterly monstrous.
He would describe it as half human and half animal, with great bat-like wings.
You would also see that the source of the light is a blunt, horn-like protuberance growing from the creature's forehead. In a panic, Alcott fires his gun 5 times, directly at the creature. To his everlasting horror, the shots seemingly do nothing. Terrified, the man retreats back to his office, where he locks the doors and windows before ultimately barricading himself inside. And there, he waits desperately for the dawn. Later that day, as word spread of the doctor's encounter, rumors began to swirl, and increasingly the citizens of Van Meter were split. While some nervously began to look toward the skies for winged nightmares, others looked for more mundane and grounded explanations. One such person was Clarence Dunn, age 26. Known to his friends as Peter, Dunn worked as a cashier at the Van Meter Bank. And after hearing whispers of mysterious lights moving about the rooftops of the downtown businesses and shadowy figures lurking at night in the darkened streets, Dunn was increasingly convinced that it was all the work of thieves plotting to rob the bank. So, that night, Dunn grabbed his trusty shotgun and headed down to his place of employment. And there, he settled in for the night, intent on stopping any would-be robbers. Dunn had already been standing guard for several hours at the Van Meter Bank when the town's tower struck 1 o'clock on October 1st. It was then that something caught his attention, a horrific gasping sound that Dunn would liken to the sound of someone being strangled. The grotesque noise is emanating from just around the side of the bank, and as Dunn listens, trying desperately to identify it, he is suddenly hit by a dazzling beam of light radiating through the bank's front window. Momentarily blinded by its intensity, Dunn is grateful when it moves away from him and begins sweeping about the room as if scanning for something. As the man's eyes adjust, a great nightmarish shape is revealed before him, standing just on the other side of the glass. Instantly, terror floods Dunn's mind and washes away any notions he had that this was all simply the work of bank robbers. The beam of light snaps back, blinding the man yet again, and Dunn reflexively pulls the trigger on his shotgun, firing point blank at the creature. With an ear-shattering boom, the front window of the bank explodes with a blast that takes part of the outside sash as well. The creature and its light are gone, convincing Dunn he has killed it, a thought he is thankful for, seeing as how his actions had just removed the only thing separating him from the winged nightmare. Dunn, a cautious man, does not leave the safety of the bank's walls until morning, but come daybreak he investigates the area thoroughly, and to his surprise he finds nothing. No body, not even blood. Instead, he only discovers several large, bizarre, three-toed tracks in the soft earth beside the bank. Dunn has a cast made of one of the footprints, and just in time, as soon it begins to rain, washing away all evidence. As day gives way once again to night, and darkness grips the land, fear seizes the citizens of Van Meter as they wonder what fresh horror awaits them next. They would not have long to wait. It is late, but still October 1st. And Otto Vernon White, age 35, is sleeping in his apartment that he keeps over the store he co-owns in downtown Van Meter, Fisher & White, Hardware and Furniture. Suddenly, the man is awakened by a bizarre grating sound, rasping and sharp, and two files being rubbed together, and it seems to be coming from just outside his bedroom window. Curious as to what is making this strange noise, but having heard the rumors whirling about town the last few days, White first arms himself before slowly opening his window. Peering out into the dark, drizzly autumn night, his eyes slowly adjusting to the gloom, White spots the source of the sound, there, just a mere 15 feet away. Directly across from his second-story bedroom window, perched on the cross arm of a telephone pole, is a huge, bizarre creature, its wings wrapped around it as if it is sleeping. White knows instantly he is looking at Dr. Alcott and Peter Dunn's monster. Wasting no time, the man takes a controlled and deliberate aim at the creature, and with a slow exhale, he squeezes the trigger. A thunderous shot rings out, reverberating through the night. But the creature doesn't fall. Like Alcott and Dunn before him, White's gun has little effect. In fact, the shot only seems to awaken the creature as the blunt horn in its forehead bursts to life with a flash, and instantly a beam of light cuts through the darkness, trained directly on White. Before the man can even react, however, the air is suddenly flooded by an odor that leaves him utterly stupefied, scraping his mind clean of anything that transpired that night after this encounter. But the creature wasn't the only one stirred from their slumber by the sound of White's gun. Just across the street, White's neighbor, Sidney Gregg, age 19, awakens to the crash of gunfire and rushes to investigate. As the young man opens his front door, he is greeted by a sight that would shatter the courage of the bravest soul. There, descending the telephone pole before him, using its feet and beak in the same manner as a parrot, is an antediluvian abomination. Greg can only stare in awestruck horror as the hideous thing reaches the ground, and now, with its feet firmly on the earth, it stretches up to its full height of 8 feet and unfurls its giant, featherless, bat-like wings. Suddenly, the creature drops down onto all fours and begins to hop around, much like a kangaroo, occasionally flapping those leathery wings. The blunt horn upon its head lights up, and once again it casts a beam which starts moving about in the same peculiar scanning motion. Suddenly, the creature is interrupted as a wailing whistle rips through the night. Startled, the beast crouches down as if meaning to lash out. Greg realizes the sound is the fast train, and it is right on schedule. The speeding locomotive is passing through Van Meter on the tracks which are only a block away. Frightened, the beast then turns and begins running on all fours, right down the middle of the street. As it heads west, it begins flapping its wings, and finally the monstrous thing lifts off and flies away into the night. Greg makes note that as it flew off, it was headed right toward the old coal mine just outside of town. Stage is set. The players are cast. And the story is about to reach its final act. It is late on October 2nd, and a cacophony of noises rising from an old abandoned mine shaft located on the western edge of Van Meter, once part of the J.L. Platt coal mine. The 260-foot deep mine has sat vacant for years, but the entrance remains open, and from its darkened depths is emanating a bizarre and terrifying din of noise. Just a few yards away, sharing the same grounds as the once functioning mine, sits the Van Meter Tile and Brick Company, whose operations manager, J.L. Platt Jr., stands outside the factory listening to the nightmarish racket echoing up from the mouth of the mine. He would describe it as if Satan and a regiment of imps were coming for battle. And as the frightened man listens, it only grows louder. By now, the men working the night shift at the factory have gathered nearby. For days, the work crews have reportedly heard strange noises coming from the abandoned mine, but none have dared to investigate. The sound grows louder still, as if heralding the coming of some great calamity. And then, as the hour reaches 1 a.m. on October 3rd, it happens. A great, monstrous shape steps from the mine's entrance, emerging from the eternal darkness. The men watch in silent horror as the creature is then joined by a second, which was similar in appearance but smaller. Some would speculate it was perhaps another gender, or maybe even a juvenile. Either way, with a sudden flash of light, the pair take wing and fly off into the night. The men working at the brick and tile factory, suspecting they had just discovered the beast's lair, sent word to Van Meter, and soon an armed mob gathered near the mine's entrance and began to plan an ambush. Meanwhile, any and every light in Van Meter was turned on in hopes that it would drive off the creature and keep it from entering the town. Through the night, the men waited anxiously near the mine, the damp and cold of autumn seeping into their bones. And as morning approached, so too did the creatures. Just before dawn, the monstrous things return, and the pair is met with a hail of gunfire. But once again, even with the tremendous firepower unleashed on the winged nightmares, the firearms have no effect. They are utterly useless against them. The creatures simply ignore the barrage of bullets raining down on them and fly directly for the mine's entrance. There, they disappear back into the shaft and descend down and down and down, back into the endless dark of the abyss. The members of the mob, now weary, stand defeated. Their plan has failed. And even now, the creatures remain free, lurking somewhere beneath their very feet. The people of Van Meter, their confidence shattered, the resolve waning, set about the only action they have left. They barricade the entrance to the mine and seal the creatures inside forever. And that is where the story ends. It has been over a century since the former postmaster of Van Meter, Harry H. Phillips, took pen to paper to report on the story of the bizarre and ghastly creature that terrorized his small town. And in the years since, much has been lost. The plaster cast Peter Dunn had made of the creature's footprint simply vanished without a trace, perhaps lost forever to the sands of time. Dr. Alcott and Sidney Gregg, key witnesses from the tale, had also faded away into obscurity and only recently were possibly rediscovered. Even the whereabouts of the entrance to the mine itself have withered away into whisper and rumor. Many have put forward that perhaps the story is simply a bit of fanciful writing on the part of Harry H. Phillips. Others have proposed it was merely a hoax, but seeing how quickly the townspeople were to open fire on the beast, it's not likely anyone would dare parade about in such a costume. So, then, what of the creature? Speculation ranges anywhere from misidentified bats to living pterosaurs. And others have put forward another idea, that perhaps the creature, like the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was a harbinger of doom. While it is true that nearly the entire downtown area of Van Meter was destroyed in a massive fire, that would not be for another 8 years. Perhaps too long to merit it being a harbinger, or at least an effective one. But it is important to remember in stories such as this, ones steeped in high strangeness, time and space will twist and warp. Reality becomes riddle, and facts become fluid. With this in mind, there may be one more small, interesting detail worth mentioning, and that is simply this. that in 1907, a mere 4 years later, 239 men and boys would perish in a massive cataclysmic blast ignited by miners carrying open lamps in an area of a mine cordoned off the day before. It would be one of the worst coal mining disasters in all of U.S. history. But it would take place in Pennsylvania, over 800 miles away, in a tiny little town. In fact, the only other town in the entire United States named Van Meter.
Oh my God. Okay. Look, before I let you say one word, I need to know. Harbinger of Doom. What do you think? That's pretty compelling stuff.
Is it?
There's only 2 Van Meters in the United States. One of them has a mine monster. The other one has a mine disaster. 4 years apart.
I mean, that's a lot of time. 4 years.
Is it though? I mean, look, you say that, but look. The movie Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, that feels like that shit just came out. What if I told you that came out like 20 goddamn years ago? All right? So, I mean, I'm just saying. It's not that goddamn old.
I mean, it's cool, but I think you're just grasping at straws, Sam.
You know what? You're entitled to that. You're entitled to your opinion.
It's a cool idea.
Oh my God. And just like that, you scuttled my theory.
I'm sorry.
Scuttled it. Oh, wait a minute.
What?
Wait a minute. Is that why they named that character? Is that why Scully on the X-Files is called? Because she scuttled his theories? Oh.
I think it's just a coincidence.
Did I just figure that out?
I think you're crazy.
Jesus Christ, it's all connected.
Okay, so what do you think about the theory of it was just a bat and, they had the new electricity lights, right, around town? What do you think it was just like the shadow of the bat? And that's why when people were shooting at it, they're just shooting at the shadow. Because the bat's so tiny, it's moving around.
So they're shooting at illusions. Shadows and illusions.
Yeah.
Oh.
What do you think?
Look. I mean, it's not as romantic,
No.
I love the idea of a monster just running loose.
Yeah, a pterosaur with a horn and a light.
Just clawing its way up out of the hollow earth.
And then crawling down like the hole with its beak and...
Oh God, don't mention that part. That just, that's the part that creeps me out. It's so gross. I don't like it. Because it's so specific.
It is.
Because look, either A, the guy who wrote this story, the postmaster, Phillips, Henry H. Phillips, that guy.
Yeah.
Either A, that guy knew someone with a parrot, or he'd seen a parrot, or like he owned a parrot, okay, to see that detail. Because that's a hell of a detail. It's a very specific detail,
It's a good.
I mean, it's so specific that it just makes me think that there's only 2 options here. Either A, this is a real thing. This really happened, and he's just reporting it as he heard it. Okay, that's A. Or B, that's just something he saw. Like he had a parrot. I don't know how prevalent parrots were, like back then, but that he saw a parrot or he knew someone with a parrot, and then he saw it do this, and it's just a detail he decided to include in the story. Because I don't know if you've heard, but...
What?
What about this? What about the other theory that this whole damn thing is just like fan fiction? Because it all came from one dude. Mm-hmm. It was all one dude that wrote it. Maybe this guy was just crushing on all those guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
All like the hot dudes in town are like starring in his little story.
All the businessmen, yeah.
Yeah. It's like the movie The Outsiders, where they took all like the hot dudes at the time, like Patrick Swayze and Ralph Macchio and like Tom Cruise to a lesser degree, and just chucked them all into the Outsiders movie, and like let's put all the hot dudes in it.
Okay, so he's just doing this to be cool and to get into their little secret club.
And he's like, this is how he buys his way in.
I wonder if it worked.
I don't know.
That's a good way to do it, though.
Yeah, that would be a good way. All right.
Samuel.
Yes. Oh my God, Laura, what's going on? This sounds rather formal. Did I do something wrong? What's happening?
You're in trouble.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What's going on? What's happening?
We have Kevin Lee Nelson on the show tonight.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I love that guy. His beard is glorious.
Yes, it's way better than yours.
His is like epic.
He's an author.
Yes, he is.
Tell me what books he's written.
Oh my God, I didn't know there was gonna be a pop quiz. Okay. All right. Okay, for our fans, both of them.
Us?
Us. Okay, our 4 fans, us and our moms. All right.
Yeah.
So for those people that are listening right now, if you are not aware of who Kevin Lee Nelson is, I am about to tell you. Kevin Lee Nelson is co-author of numerous books. Including Wendigo Lore that he wrote with Chad Lewis. And he is also co-author on the Van Meter Visitor book and the Big Muddy Monster book, both of which that he did with Chad Lewis and Noah Voss. And also is the guy who actually coined the name the Van Meter Visitor. So he is a perfect guest for tonight's show. I am very excited.
That is correct.
I expect a gold star. Thank you very much.
You will. You'll get 1.
All right. But you know what? That's more than I deserve. Thank you.
I can cut it in half for you if you'd like.
No, 1's fine.
Okay. So let's talk to Kevin about this. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So let's just start off. How did you come up with the name?
So I get asked that question quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because, some people say, well, why is it called The Visitor? And when we were doing research on the book, we noticed that the behavior of the creature was kind of atypical of your normal monster or undiscovered animal or cryptid. It acted much more strange, almost like an extraterrestrial or even more accurately, an ultra-terrestrial. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with ultra-terrestrial phenomena, but people often describe the creatures as looking very bizarre, which this creature did. Is 8 feet tall. It was a bat-like creature, and it had a beak and a horn on its head. And the strangest feature of the whole thing is this horn would project light from it. And people would say that it was almost like a searchlight in its strength and how it would blind people. So some of that is very similar to ultra-terrestrial phenomena where they describe strange lights. The thing also gave off a really strange odor, which is another thing that people describe when they have ultra-terrestrial encounters. It's like these kind of like sulfur-like rotten egg kind of stenches. The creature gave that off.
That's crazy.
And so I kind of figured that just calling it a monster or just a creature wasn't super apt. So, and there's kind of an alliteration there with, Van Meter Visitor. And we thought it was more like a visitation of this kind of strange animal, like perhaps from a different dimension, perhaps from just somewhere that we can't even comprehend.
So just out of curiosity, so like an extraterrestrial would be like from outer space, somewhere outside the planet. So like an ultra-terrestrial, where would that be coming from?
So an ultra-terrestrial comes from a different plane of existence or a different dimension that could be coexisting with ours all the time. It's just a higher dimension than what we can see or normally experience. And in theory, what's happening is occasionally our dimension intersects with that dimension, so we're able to see them. And, however briefly, or, that's why you'll have these events happen and then they just kind of stop randomly. And then either never happens again, or it takes a long time for it to reoccur.
Oh, cool. Oh, okay. So like our reality and another reality would just sort of scrape against each other and something kind of fell through for a little bit.
Exactly. And, if any of your listeners are familiar with John Keel and books like the Mothman Prophecies, he often talks about these places that are called window areas. And some people, they go by a lot of names. So some people call them portals, some people call them vortexes, but they're kind of areas there that have an abnormal amount of just strange activity, whether it's paranormal activity like hauntings or UFO sightings or Bigfoot sightings. It's just kind of, you get these clusters of strange phenomena all in these zones. And during the Mothman Prophecies, John Keel theorized that the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia, at least during that time, was one of these window areas where this thing, in this case, the Mothman, was coming through.
Oh, interesting.
So this happened in 1903, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Happened in 1903 in a Midwestern town of Van Meter, Iowa. And Van Meter is just a little bit west of Des Moines. So it's kind of, right smack dab in the middle of the state. Very small town back then, and it still is a pretty small town. I think it's only about 900 people even today.
Okay. And this happened over a series of days, right? It wasn't just
Correct.
one time. Multiple people have seen this.
Yep.
Prominent people, right? Like bankers and doctors and store owners. So it's not just
Exactly.
some weird hobo or something.
Exactly. You have all these famous cryptids that we're all aware of that, sometimes there was
Mhm.
just one sighting of the creature and it never showed up again. Sometimes it was just one sighting by one person, But what makes the Van Meter visitor case interesting to us, and partly why we wrote the book, is because it was over a series of 5 nights, and it was a number of people seeing it throughout the town. And like you said, it was the most prominent people. It was, the banker, businessmen, local doctor, people that would have everything to lose by just
Mhm.
making up crazy stories.
Yeah, so I got a question for you. So before your book, I have never even heard of this thing. But now it's become much more mainstream. I'm seeing it all over the place. How did you guys how did you discover this thing? Like where'd you hear about this?
So, we do a lot of just random research and digging up old articles from old newspapers and things like that. And we came across this newspaper article about this incident in 1903, and it wasn't just a localized news report. I mean, this thing made New York papers at the time.
Oh,
So it was widespread but quickly forgotten. People just kind of brushed it in the carpet. Oh, well, that's just these, crazy bumpkins out in the Midwest, shooting at shadows and stuff, and so people just kind of blew it off. And even in the town, a lot of people had completely forgotten about what had happened, because especially in this day and age, people are so mobile, they're moving around and rarely staying in the same town for generations. And so it was mostly forgotten. And we were passing through the area and we were like, oh, well, we should maybe just see if there's anything else we can find about this kind of brief story that we found in an old newspaper report. And so we started digging in the local archives, and it was kind of one of those things where, you just keep pulling on that thread, and it just keeps coming and coming. And one thing led to another. And in a short period of time, we had all kinds of different stories and different perspectives of the events, and realized that there was a lot more there than just this kind of throwaway blurb that we thought it was. And eventually it was enough to make a book out of it.
and a festival.
And a festival, exactly.
Very cool. So, it's amazing to think that this story would have 100% probably been lost. Because there's even people there. I will tell you right now, even people there. The first year I was there, I was sitting in the bar. I'm having a drink. And a guy next to me says, "Hey, what are you here for?" And I tell him, "I'm here for your festival." Now, this guy lives there. He's from the town. He has no clue what the hell I'm talking about. None. So I gotta say, you guys should probably be pretty proud that like this thing now is very, very much becoming a thing where, the festival is growing and it's showing up on multiple shows. And I 100% would guarantee you, I don't think any of that would have happened if you guys hadn't dug into that story. That's amazing.
I agree. I think it would have been forgotten. I mean, there's so many urban legends and local folklore across the whole country that's just one generation away from vanishing if it's not, continually retold or written down somehow. Who knows what we've already lost? Probably all kinds of cool monster stories here and there. But and Iowa, it's not really known as monster country mostly. I mean, if you dig really deep, you can find a lot of weird stuff. But when most people think of Iowa, that's not the first thing you think of. And when you think of like more spooky areas, you think of like the New Jersey Pine Barrens, or Skateboard Swamp with the Lizard Man down in the Carolinas. But this kind of put Iowa on the map as far as cryptids go, because now it's actually known for one that's widely known.
So who came up with the festival?
So with some of the people that we're working with during the research of the book, one of them her name was Rachel Backstrom. She works at the local library. She was really, really helpful to us in our research and helping us dig up stuff. And, because she lives in Van Meter, and so she kind of knew where everything was. And so she was instrumental in writing the book. And we mentioned to her how it would be kind of cool if the town had a festival around this, similar to how Point Pleasant has Mothman and other communities have monster festivals. And was real receptive to the idea and thought that was a great idea, and worked with some other people in town. And I mean, it happened really fast. I mean, the book came out, I believe, in 2012, 2013 ish. And within a year, we had the first Van Meter Visitor Festival.
Oh, wow.
So it was very quick how it all worked out. And right away, right out of the gate, it had a pretty good attendance too, and still does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you guys have had you've had some amazing guest speakers that you've had. I mean, my God, I mean, David Weatherly, and of course Ken Gerhard, and oh yeah, and Laura spoke one time. Let's not forget that. And I was also there when I got to see you be drowned out by a tractor.
Yeah,
the one year that was amazing.
Yeah, there's always something, like, because we kind of have to work with what we have there in Van Meter. Although this last 2 years, now that the whole festival, the speaking side of it, that is mostly indoors, that's really helpful. We actually have like a dedicated speaking space, because for the first few years we were speaking in the garage of the local fire department. And so, all kinds of just, various noise happens around there. And yeah, like you mentioned, during my presentation, this guy just decided to fire up his tractor and let it idle right there, But in another year, we were speaking outside under a very, very small tent, and it decided just to absolutely pour rain, that year. So, but we made do with it and kept moving on and made each year bigger and better.
Yeah, I don't think people understand when you say decide to park his tractor right there. It was like 10 feet away from you. It was crazy.
And he just seemed oblivious that there was like a presentation going on and about, 50, 60 people wanting to, hear it. Just, they just do what they do every day.
So Kevin, what was one of the weirdest things that or like something that you were shocked about from doing all the research on the visitor?
I think just how we didn't know if it was going to be a widely received book, at all. Like, we thought that maybe only some people in Iowa would be interested, or maybe people would be like, oh, well, this happened 100 years ago, so who cares? We didn't know how it would be received. And I think the biggest thing for me is just how the book has really taken off. You already mentioned the festival and everything, but like the fact that people around the country, even around the world, have now heard of the Van Meter Visitor. They know the story. And I mean, now it's for sure going to be carried on, another 100 years, just because all the documentation that's been done. And one of the things that I personally enjoy doing is, every 6 months or maybe every year or so, I'll just do a Google search for images of the Van Meter Visitor. And what I really, really enjoy is seeing other people's artistic interpretations of what this creature looked like. When we first wrote the book, there'd be like maybe one or two, people that have like their interpretation. But now if you do it, there's hundreds and hundreds of different interpretations of the creature, because the way that it was described initially in the reports, they gave details, but not like a lot of details. They said it was 8 feet tall, had bat wings, it had a beak, it had a blunt horn on its head that the light came from, and that it was dark in color. We don't know if that's dark gray, dark brown, we don't know. And so just going with that, it's really interesting to see how different people have interpreted that into all kinds of different monsters. And I think it just shows how creative people are.
Yes.
And especially, and even kids, you'll see like these crayon drawings of the Van Meter Visitor, and it's just super cool.
Yeah, there's even there's a MetaZoo card for it now.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Super cool.
Yeah. Well, and even seeing like Mr. Sam sharing like his painting, like that version of it, seeing that all the way, from something like that all the way down to like the kid drawings. I mean, it has made a hell of an impact. Just the inspiration that this has been for people.
I hope you're patting yourself on the back.
Yeah, as you should.
Thank you. You brought up Sam's depiction of it. It made the cover of David Weatherly's book, his Iowa Cryptids book. That's probably one of my favorite images of the creature. I really like that. Like the ones in the book are just some like early pen and ink sketches that I did, based on, I was trying to do sort of like an eyewitness sketch, not make it too detailed, but just kind of black and white sketch kind of thing, so that readers could still imagine it in their own mind the way they want to imagine it, without spelling out too much. But I think I really like his. I think it's fantastic.
Were there reports that it made any noise?
Yes. So that's actually during a few of the 5 nights that it showed up in town. that's what first alerted people to the creature, at least in two of the cases. In one case, they heard what sounded like a gargling or like someone being strangled, kind of like a weird sound. And they're like, what the heck is this? And then he went out to investigate and was hit full in the face with this blinding light and then saw this creature. And then on another night, the noise that was described was like two metal rasps like rubbing together, sort of like a metallic screeching sound is what it made. And then later, when they discovered that there was more than one of these things at the abandoned mine, they said there was all kinds of horrible sounds coming out of the mine of the creatures that were in there. And so they described it as sounding like hell and a whole bunch of imps, descending from the depths, so they did make a lot of weird noises.
And the light was a bright white. Did they ever mention a color?
They never mention a color.
Okay.
That's interesting you bring that up because, yeah, it's never mentioned. It's just mentioned as
a light.
Well, they described it as often looking like a searchlight.
Okay.
And some people thought it looked even like someone, when they initially thought that maybe it was a hoaxer, they thought that maybe someone was wearing like a miner's cap or something like that. So in that regard, I'm assuming it's more of like a white light or a
yellow
candlelight color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then multiple people shot at this, right? Like 3 or 4 people did try and shoot and at like point blank at this monster, and it did nothing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like Clarence Dunn, who was the town banker, he was sleeping in the back of his business, because at the time they thought that this might have initially have been like robbers, like kind of casing the town at night. And so the professionals were kind of on edge, especially the banker, thinking like, are people, casing the joint? Like, what's going on? So he slept in the back of the building so he could be there if something happened. And, this light comes in through the front windows, and then he sees what this thing is. And he pulls out a shotgun and shoots this thing right through and blows out the front windows of his own bank to shoot this thing. And then but it doesn't appear to have any effect. And then because of that, he just kind of goes back into the back of the building and waits until dawn. And then in the morning, he goes outside to see if there's any blood, if there's maybe, some big dead animal. He didn't know, but it was all gone. It was gone. No trace at all, just broken glass. But because it had rained and back then, streets were mostly mud, there was these large 3-toed footprints in the mud out in front of the bank. And so he did make a cast of those. I wish we knew whatever happened to those casts. That'd be nice if they turned up in someone's attic someday, but
oh, that would have been cool.
Typically plaster casts, are pretty fragile and don't last, 100 years. But yeah, like it. And then, it was fired at a number of times, and the things just kind of shrug it off. Like it had no effect whatsoever, especially on the final night when 2 of them, there was the large one and then a smaller one too, that was either a female or a juvenile. And they just started blasting. They had a posse out there at this mine, and they started blasting these things and didn't have any effect. The only thing that they would do is they would give off this horrible odor, when they were attacked. But then they just kind of shrugged it off and went back down into the mine.
And then they closed the mine, right? Like, and sealed it off.
So that's part of the telling of the story that gets a little bit hazy. So
okay,
the wording that they use is they barricaded the mine. So we don't know if that's like boarding it up or putting something in front of the mine, or if that's like, TNT blowing up the whole mine itself, because this mine was over 260 feet deep. It was really deep, and it was big enough down there where they could have horses and stables, like underground stables for horses to carry out coal and things. And so this was a almost vertical shaft that, I think it kind of went down at an angle the way it was described to me. And so today, if you go looking for it, there's really no trace of the mine shaft opening. You can stand where it was, but it's completely collapsed, at least in the front part of the mine. And probably by now, most of it's probably filled up with water too, I'm guessing.
Wait. Hold on. Mr. Nelson, Kevin, can I call you Kevin?
Yes.
All right. So K-Dog, what I'm wondering is this. So what you're saying is that if I go to Van Meter, all right, and I go to where about the mine was, and I dig about 40 feet down, I get through all that rubble that's like blocking the doorway or whatever. That once I get past that 40 feet, okay, there's another 220 feet of just empty space underneath that town. That's what you're telling. There's just a 200 plus foot hole. Just a massive, massive hole under that town that's just full of water and horror and death and nightmares and God knows what the hell is down there. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they excavated a ton of material out of there. So there's a whole honeycomb network of tunnels, assuming after 100 years they haven't collapsed. But that's what that was there at one time.
Oh, my God. Why? Why must you humans dig into the cold, dark, dead earth? Why?
Well, eventually what we'd like to do is get permission from the landowners to have some kind of tour. Because right now, if you take the tours during the festival, you can get kind of close to where the mine is, enough to at least see the area from a public road. But as of right now, they're not allowing the public on the actual property just because there's the remnants of an old tile factory there too that's kind of crumbling and falling apart, and they're just afraid of someone, like a brick falling on someone, or who knows, even the ground collapsing and someone falling into a collapsed mine or something.
Oh God.
So right now it's primarily just used for grazing of their cows and things.
Let the cows fall in the hole, no big deal.
Yeah, you think if a cow won't fall, human wouldn't fall, but but if we can figure out enough of it that's deemed safe enough to have like a small tour or something someday, that would be what we'd hope for.
And so, and when you're on that tour, like the walking tour and stuff, and you see that area, the mine shaft is there somewhere in front of it.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we know where the opening was, but right now it just looks like, like a lump in the ground kind of thing, but the mine covered that entire area.
And so who owns that? I mean, do we know who owns the land now? I mean, is it still owned by a company, or is it like just local farmers, or what?
It's just local farmers right now. And we've got a good relationship with them. That's why, we're hoping that at sometime down the road, we can at least have like a limited access to get a little bit closer to where some of the stuff went down and closer to the mine.
Sure. All right.
And because the whole area is really interesting, because even before the Van Meter story kind of like came back into light, that whole area where the brick and tile factory is, which is right next to where the mine shaft was, that was known for being haunted. People would say that they would see weird lights, they would hear strange sounds, they would like bricks and things would kind of move by themselves, because there's like a hilly part to it, and some people would camp back in there, and they would say that like all kinds of spooky things would happen. So people that had forgotten the Van Meter creature story were calling it a haunted area just because it had some strange phenomena.
I mean, strange lights. I mean, what could that be? I don't know.
Right. And one of the more interesting things too that I found after writing the book is, after doing a lot more research into other ultra-terrestrial cases where, these things show up, you'd often see them associated with different kinds of like older burial mounds or earthworks from various cultures. And I said, well, wouldn't that be funny if there was like an Indian mound nearby or something, close to the Van Meter mine site? And after doing some research, I found out that in fact there is. It's just, I mean, it's within sight. It's not on that actual property, but it's like adjacent to it, kind of up on a rise. So there's a Native American mound just like right there. And so, people that are more spiritually inclined also believe that these creatures or entities, whatever you want to call them, are kind of like protector spirits that were kind of put in place or summoned by, these older cultures to protect their burial mounds.
Well, that's just like the Beast of Bray Road. That's, near all those mounds as well. So in Wisconsin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, guys, if we're being 100% honest, there's probably a fairly good chance there was probably an earth mound right there, back in the day, before the mine went in, but it was in the way of progress, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, we have, like 90+% of all Native American mounds that have been, completely bulldozed for farmland, and they were just, they didn't give it a second thought in the 1800s. So very few remain.
And how much you want to make a bet that earthbound was in the shape of a winged frickin' pterodactyl?
Right.
Look, and another thing. I mean, look, I don't want to brag or anything, right? But as a Bigfoot, as a Sasquatch, all right? I just want to say, I mean, look, I know my cryptids, okay? I know my hairy hominids like my yetis and my falk monsters and my skunk apes, okay, and my ring pendex. Like, I know all this stuff, all right? And I know, like, lizard men and sea serpents are a dime a dozen, the plesiosaur-looking things, the giant snake-looking thing, all this stuff, right. Okay, but, this thing, like its description of being like, it's almost, in a lot of ways, sounds like a prehistoric.
Like a pterosaur.
Yeah, but, but the glowing horn, the bioluminescence, that's odd. I mean, look, are there other creatures that are described as having this sort of bioluminescence, that are like winged things?
Well, the ropin.
Well, yeah, like the ropin, but it doesn't have the horn,
but not horn.
Right? It doesn't have the horn, right? But so like this feels like more like a Kelly Hopkinsville, Flatwoods Monster, Enfield Horror sort of thing, where it's just kind of a one-off, okay? Just a one-off. Like I'm not aware of there being other things, exactly like this. I mean, ever.
Yeah, I'm not either, at least in its exact description. It's like you said, it is very similar to like a pterodactyl kind of type creature. Like they said it had a beak. We don't know if it had like a hard beak, like today's birds, or like a parrot, or if it was more of like a toothy snout kind of thing that, a pterodactyl might have had that they just kind of referred to as a beak. We don't really know what exactly they meant when they said beak. Although they did say when at one point it was climbing down a telephone pole and using its beak like a parrot. So that kind of implies, how parrots kind of will walk down things. That kind of implies like more of like like an actual bird-like beak rather than like a pterodactyl snout. But we don't know. But what's interesting is it fits a pattern of winged creatures throughout that. There's like a corridor stretching from Illinois through Iowa and out into the Great Plains, where there's just all kinds of aerial phenomena like that. For instance, in the 70s, there was the famous Lawndale incident where a young boy was almost carried off by a giant bird. If you go back even further to Native American legends, down by Alton, Illinois, in the St. Louis area, there's that depiction of what's called the Piasaw bird that's painted on the side of the hill. There's a lot of different kind of Thunderbird stories that are all through there, and so I don't know if they're all the same thing, if they're related, but it's just weird that within that kind of Midwestern zone, you just have all this aerial strange phenomena. Like again, after we wrote the book, we were contacted by a number of people that had strange stories, and we were contacted by a pastor to a church in Colfax, Iowa, which is to the east of Des Moines. And he said he was driving through the countryside, and he was kind of looking at the corn, and he saw this dark creature kind of in the distance, but flying above the corn. And he said that, for lack of a better term, he said it looked like a dragon. It was this like winged creature, all that was very dark and big and flying over the corn. He said he had no idea what it was, but he heard about our book and told us the story. So maybe these things are still out there.
And this thing walked on all fours, right?
It did.
That's creepy.
So after it climbed down that telephone pole, like I mentioned, it walked on all fours, kind of with its wings folded up. And they said it kind of hopped like a kangaroo, and it kind of scuttled and moved down the street like it was trying to get enough momentum to take off. And then that's exactly what it did. Like once it got kind of going, it started flapping its wings and took off.
Yeah, I gotta say the two details of the story that just creep me out to no end is the description of it coming down the pole using its beak like a parrot, because that's so specific.
Yeah,
that's so specific. It's so, it's like if someone was making up the story, you wouldn't go to that level of detail, where it's like that seems real, and it creeps me out to no end. But then the other part is the fact that they had it like it gets down to the bottom and then it begins running to get momentum to lift off the ground. Again, little weird details like that where it's like, That feels real.
Yeah. And when it was on top of that pole, this it was someone shot at it. It was just like hanging out on top of this pole. Someone shot at it, and it reacted by, again, giving off that odor, and it was almost like he woke it up. And then as soon as he did, that light, like just zeroed in right on him, and that odor almost overcame him. He said he felt nauseous and everything because of it. So like that's kind of the strange thing about this creature. It never threatened anybody. It just kind of hung out in town, and like it was the people that were more of a threat to it, if anything, and it was just using these sort of like natural reactions,
Yeah.
when it was accosted.
So do you think that it giving off that smell, which I believe is described as that it what's the word? It stupefied him. Now my question is, do you think that odor that it gave off or whatever, is that like a defense mechanism, or do you think that was like did he like rupture something? Did he like, is it like the alien from Aliens, but instead of being acid it stinks?
Right. I mean, my first thought is it's some kind of defense mechanism, like similar to a skunk or something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because no one really talks about it just smelling all the time. I mean, they only saw it for 5 nights, so it's hard to determine whether it was doing it as a defense mechanism or if it just kind of gave off that odor all the time. It's kind of hard to determine that. People talk about a lot of Bigfoot stories where like they get this same exact smell. It's that rotten egg sulfur smell when Bigfoot is nearby, or again, like a lot of ultra-terrestrial phenomena has the same occurrence, but it's always this terrible smell. Of course, in the past they associated it with demons, and sulfur and hell and that kind of thing. So it's interesting.
Oh, maybe one reality over is just maybe it's sulfur based or something. I don't know. And that door opens up and it just all floods on over.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Kevin. So what do you think it is?
So I get that question a lot. Do I think it's a living animal or some kind of like carryover from, the Jurassic period, or, what do I think it is? And, it's the same kind of topic, that we have with a lot of Bigfooters. It's the flesh and blood people versus, the more metaphysical, ultra-terrestrial, paranormal Bigfoot kind of thing. And I tend to think, there's cases of like pocket ecosystems being kind of discovered where they've been trapped for so long and they've kind of evolved by themselves. Like in the book, I give an example of this cave that was discovered in Israel, that it was completely sealed up. It was a very large cave, but it was this completely sealed ecosystem. And there was some kind of like sort of insects and a number of other kind of creatures in there that had been evolving completely different from everything else on Earth, because they were completely isolated, had no way to get out. But they had everything they needed to keep going and keep living. So, were these creatures part of some kind of closed, elaborate and vast chamber under Iowa, and maybe they were using these bioluminescent horns to navigate, in total darkness or something. Maybe they were, kind of like those blind albino animals you see in caves or something, but it kind of stretches reality a little bit because of how large they were. For a creature that size, it would have to have an enormous amount of food, and there would have to be, of course, a lot of them too, to keep a population going for so long, that like I just can't imagine a cave system big enough to be able to support something like that, over thousands and thousands of years. So, and for it to just be some kind of animal out in the wild that people just only see, every couple decades or something, seems kind of just implausible too. So that's why I personally lean towards the ultra-terrestrial theory, that it's some kind of organism or wildlife from a slightly different dimension adjacent to ours that, for whatever reason, got like punched its way through into ours, however briefly. I've zero evidence. It's just a theory, but based on how this kind of thing happens, not just with a creature described like the Van Meter visitor, but like all kinds of other strange phenomena, that have a similar kind of bizarreness to it too.
So just out of curiosity, do you got your fingers crossed that at some point Hollywood's going to come knocking and they're going to want to make this into a movie?
I think it would be great. I mean, if only just to preserve the legend even more. Nothing makes folklore more popular than a movie, because it gets to audiences that you'd never reach otherwise. I mean, half the success of the Mothman Festival that draws 20,000 people, is because of the movie. If the movie hadn't come out, who knows what it would be today. But I think it's a great and compelling story on its own, especially as a period piece. 1903, middle of America, you could almost turn it into like a pseudo Western if you wanted to,
Oh yeah.
So I think it would be great. In fact, since the book came out, I can't remember the name of the college. One of the colleges in Iowa actually did a play about the whole incident. So it has been performed, at least in some regard.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Someone contact Rich Hatem and make him write a screenplay.
Was it last year they debuted the 1903 documentary?
That was the year before.
Yeah, that was the year before. Yep.
What was that about? Just a documentary on the visitor?
Yeah, it was kind of a loose documentary, but the majority of it was a nighttime investigation that they did. They got permission to temporarily go out onto the land close to the mine and the brick and tile factory, and film out there. And so it was kind of a lot of their night vision investigation kind of thing, and they thought that they were seeing lights kind of in the hills and in the trees and things like that. And so it was like partial documentary, but more like investigative kind of thing.
Well, and I know I think it was Expedition X with Josh Gates. I know they came out there and filmed something. I know Chad Lewis was on that episode, but yeah, it's great that this is getting out there.
It's been on a number of monster shows. I can't remember which one it was, but one of them even did some pretty cool historic recreations. They even had the actors in period clothes and basically playing the roles of the major key witnesses and everything. So that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome. I appreciate that stuff. I think that's that's the kind of stuff I really want to see, is the like you said, a period piece where it's almost like a pseudo Western. Because I mean, it's the amount of gunfire in this story.
Yeah.
I mean, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, and then just build up to the end where there's going to be dynamite involved. Someone's probably going to have a Gatling gun, because that'd be cool as shit. I mean, come on, it'd be awesome. I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, 1903 Iowa, in that rural area, I mean, it was still, dirt streets. People were still using, horses and wagons. And I mean, it was still, still frontier-ish at the time.
Were there any electric lights in town at that point? Because I know electric lights are just sort of becoming a thing, but would anyone have even had something like that?
I kind of doubt it. I don't know for certain, but I mean, considering how small the town was, and in 1903, I kind of doubt it. They had telephone, or at least telegraph wires. But as far as electricity, and lighting, maybe very sparingly.
Sure. So any random lights just showing up is probably somebody walking around with a lantern at this point, I would guess.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they thought on the first night. U.G. Griffith, who was the implement dealer at the time, he was walking around at about 1 a.m. and he saw this light on top of one of the rooftops of the downtown buildings. And he's like, what is that? Is someone just monkeying around over there? What is that? But then the light, it jumped across the street, further than any human could do, and over to an adjacent rooftop. And he's just like, what is that? And, he told people about it. And of course they're just like, oh, that you're crazy. You're imagining things. And then as each night went by and more people saw it, that's when the town started kind of getting into a panic. But initially at that stage, that's why they were thinking that maybe it was, burglars or something, people kind of casing the town.
And the story itself, so it sort of culminates into them sealing the mine or barricading the mine. And then then that's it, right? It's just sort of done. We never talk about it again. It
Yeah.
never is mentioned again. There's
Yeah.
never there's never an anniversary in the town of when we killed the monster. It's just sort of done.
Yeah, and that's the strange thing. It just ends. And we theorize in the book, like why was the ending so abrupt? Like what happened next? Is that, how can that just be the final chapter? But we theorize that people kind of wanted to forget about it because it was just so weird and it disturbed people. People back then, they just didn't talk about everything like we talk about things today. If it made you
Right.
look bad or made you look crazy or made you look like a bumpkin, you're just not going to talk about it. Because if you're afraid of what people are going to think, you're going to look at you sidewise or think you're crazy or a drunk. So my theory is that the people, I don't want to say that they were ashamed, but I think they were afraid of being made fun of in the town, by people from outside of town that perhaps didn't experience it, or people that moved to town after the events, and they were just like, that's just crazy talk kind of thing, So I think that they just stopped talking about it, or maybe they were just so disturbed by the whole thing that they're just like, you know what, we're never going to mention this again. We're going to move on, and maybe it'll be forgotten forever, until these yahoos 100 years later, dig it all back up again.
Well, I could totally get behind that, because I'll tell you, like, being in Minnesota, people here do not talk about this kind of stuff. I mean, like, they just don't. Like, these stories had to happen here, right? Because they happen everywhere, but like no one ever mentions it here. Like, there's never any talk of like, hey, when they, killed the monster in town, or the lights, like the mysterious lights. It's just sort of not like the Midwest in general.
Yeah.
Not including Illinois, but like Iowa, especially Iowa and Minnesota are like very notorious for sort of like not embracing this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, whereas Wisconsin seems to sort of embrace their weirdness.
It does now. I mean, it didn't always. I mean, I think a lot of people that are involved in the paranormal or cryptozoology, anything bizarre, high strange, just you name it. I think they don't realize that the fact that people are willing to talk about it and be very open about it is a relatively new thing. I mean, if you even just go back to like the 70s and 80s, people just didn't really talk about that. I mean, you had some shows that were kind of, groundbreaking, like In Search Of, and some of the Bigfoot flaps and stuff like that. But in general, back then, if you told people that you saw a ghost or you saw Bigfoot, I mean, you'd be laughed at, you'd be made fun of, you could maybe even lose your job because they thought you were crazy or non-reliable. And so people just didn't talk about it. And so, it's only because of like all this flood of TV shows and stuff that we've had for the last, 10, 15 years. And just the growing popularity of it has normalized it so much that now it's like, yeah, people talk about it all the time, and they're not really worried about, being made fun of. Like, everyone knows about it. But back then it was just kind of a taboo. You just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee there's some sort of correlation between how much your state talks about, people in your state talk about your state cryptid and how cool that cryptid is. Because I'll tell you, if you got a cool cryptid, if you got a Beast of Bray Road, people are going to talk about it. If you got, if you got, something dopey like Minnesota has, I don't know, what do we got? Puckwudgies, maybe? I don't know.
Wendigo.
Yep.
All right.
Wendigo gets lumped in here all the time, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a Minnesota thing. I always feel like it's sort of an afterthought. They're like, well, technically this is probably Canada, but we'll give it to you.
It's both. I mean, there are, Wendigo, like if you map out, the Wendigo legend, it definitely includes Minnesota and Wisconsin, parts of Michigan, but it is primarily a Canadian thing. But it does dip down into the States. There's some definite Wendigo cases in Minnesota.
And that subject in itself is absolutely horrifying. Like the Wendigo is, I mean, that's like a whole nother level. I mean, we can all kind of laugh about Van Meter and be like, oh, this is cool, this is fun. But Wendigo, it's like, it just starts making your skin crawl. Like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. When Chad and I wrote Wendigo lore, we had to completely approach it entirely different than any of the other books that we wrote. like whether it was like Van Meter, we kind of wrote it as like this kind of crazy incident, that took place in Iowa, kind of weird and strange, but kind of also kind of fun. Same with the Big Muddy Monster, the white Bigfoot that's seen in Southern Illinois for the last 100 years. Similar kind of thing, it's kind of this fun legend, but the Wendigo legend is dead serious, and like many real people like died, so you have to kind of treat it with a lot more seriousness and respect, than your typical legend. So we had to kind of tread carefully with our tone and how we approached it when we wrote that book.
And people don't like it when you say that name either.
Yeah.
Like I know Chad has told me, like we couldn't even say the name when, you're trying to get more information on it. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
People, really believe in it. So
what name is that, Laura? What name is it?
The Wendigo.
I see. You weren't supposed to say it. You weren't supposed to say it. Come on. You just
and this kind of gets back to what we were talking about too, is like this either reluctance to talk about these things or say them, it's very much culture dependent, because I have a friend who's Hmong, and he's always just like, you white guys, you just talk about these creatures all the time, but in my culture, like you don't talk about them, because like when you talk about them, you attract their attention, or you're kind of pushing your luck. But he's like, but you guys, you just go out looking for these things. You're crazy.
Right.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, how'd you end up getting involved in all this? Like, what was your gateway cryptid monster paranormal experience? Whatever. What got you into this stuff?
That's a great question, because I wish I knew. It's been an interest of mine as long as I can remember. Like a lot of my peers and co-researchers and stuff, like, and people that I meet in the field, they'll have like this sort of life-changing experience. They see something, like they see a UFO, or they have some kind of strange encounter, and then it's a paradigm shift for how they view the world. And then ever since then, it's like, they got to know more. They got to find out what it was they saw, and it becomes, almost this obsession to like figure out, more about their experience. But I never really had that like one moment. It's just kind of always been a fascination of mine since as long as I can remember. I mean, when I was a little kid, like 5 or 6, I had this record player, and whereas like a normal person, I guess, would be playing like tunes on it, I had this record that was just Halloween sound effects. And that's what I went to bed every night listening to, was like weird Halloween sound effects. And I just thought that was amazing. And in 4th grade, we had to do this, it's kind of like your first attempt at public speaking kind of thing. We had to go up in front of the class and demonstrate something. And most kids would demonstrate how to make a PB&J, or demonstrate how to tie a shoe or something like that. And for mine, I went up in front of the class and demonstrated how to do a seance.
Yes. Yes.
So it's just always been this fascination from day one. So I can't really point to any one particular thing. It's just been a constant progression, a constant evolution.
I was hoping you're going to say Ouija board, but seance. I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it. Oh, yes.
What a cool kid.
Yeah.
Well, my teachers didn't think so.
Yeah, but who's laughing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my main thing. Was I was just kind of curious, like how you got into this stuff, and I know, like, as far as like the Van Meter stuff goes, we don't have a lot of answers. I mean, one quick question I do have though is, was there a fire in Van Meter at some point that burned the downtown area down?
Yes. So one of the things that we explored in the Van Meter book, because so many of the events and so many of the descriptions and the way the creature behaved and stuff had a lot of similarities to the Mothman case. And we even kind of refer to it as like a pre or a proto Mothman event, this to only 50 years before the Point Pleasant incident. And so naturally we're kind of thinking, well, maybe this was also like some kind of like harbinger of some kind of tragic event or something. And so we looked to see if anything really bad happened around the town, like after, these visitations of the creature. And but we couldn't really find anything. But like you pointed to, the town did have a really bad fire that wiped out a good third of the downtown, because there was a lot of wood buildings back then. But it wasn't close enough to the sightings for us to really, with any kind of confidence, make a link between the two, because I think it was about 7 or 8 years after the creature sightings that they had the really big fire. If it had happened, say, within 6 months, then maybe there could be something there. But because of that distance in time, I didn't even want to make that kind of leap, I guess.
Well, now I'm wondering what the likelihood is that the footprint, the cast that Peter Dunn, Clarence, that he had made, what's the possibility that one of those had been, I don't know, like sitting on display, or maybe just sitting on a shelf in a back room somewhere in one of those buildings that burnt in the downtown, and now it's just lost forever.
Yeah.
It's
possible. I mean, fortunately, enough of the downtown survived to where when you go to the Van Meter Festival, you can actually see the bank. It's still standing. You can see the bank where the window was shot out, when the banker was shooting at the creature. All that still exists today. So there's enough of the downtown where you can actually feel what it was like to be back then.
One thing I was saying, just an idea for future reference when you guys do the festival. Now think about this. What if you got like a big, huge, sort of like a big giant canvas or something, and projected the old buildings like where they used to be, like ghost buildings?
That would be super great. Yeah. Or use some kind of hologram technology or something.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, that'd be cool.
I think last year you guys had like an inflatable like little dragon on the top of one of the buildings, but that would be cool.
Yeah. They had sort of like a wind creature on top of the bank to kind of show people like what it would have looked like having this thing kind of lurking up there.
I love it. So Kevin, are you currently writing anything new? Like what's coming up in the future for you?
Yeah, so I've got a lot of projects, probably too many projects. As they say, too many irons in the fire. The one that I'm working on right now specifically is I have a book coming out that's all about hellhound legends and hellhound and black dog, phantom black dog legends, but specifically American hellhound and black dog legends. There's a few books that are out there in the market that are primarily like the British legends and lore, but not a whole lot has been done about the American one. So I'm going to be working on one that's just the American legends, going all the way back to, the legend of, like the hellhound on my trail kind of thing, and, selling your soul at the crossroads, and, how it like ties into like Delta Blues legends, and also some trucker legends that involve black dogs and things like that too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome.
All right, well, where can people find you online?
Online, you can follow my Facebook page, Kevin Lee Nelson. That's where I post a lot of my travels, and I post a lot of like kind of brief legends and lore as I travel around the country and discover new things. We are kind of revamping our website right now. Yeah, our website is backroadslore.com. It's currently down because we're redoing the whole thing. But shortly after, you'll be able to go there and get our books as well. So, and of course, all of our books are available on Amazon as well, too.
Awesome.
Hey, Kevin, I just got to say thank you. Thank you so much, not just for talking with us tonight, which this has been awesome. This has been a great time. This has been fantastic. But, I got to say thank you, not just to you, but to Chad Lewis and to Noah Voss, for not letting this story just vanish, and for, dusting it off and pulling it from the jaws of oblivion, and because honest to God, man, this has been a real gift. It's been a real gift for this community, and it's brought together some just amazing people. So you know what? Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yep. Thanks again.
Cool.
You know what? That Kevin Lee Nelson, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pretty nice guy. He is a pretty nice guy. He's kind of quiet when you meet him in real life, but that guy, he's like just a fountain of knowledge.
Yes.
It's awesome.
I love him.
I love that guy.
I love all our friends.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say?
Yes. And you know what?
I heard he's a hero.
He is a hero. Chad David from Creepy Acres. He got himself stuck in a zip tie like a helpless animal. He got stuck in a zip tie. And he asked, hey, Kevin, do you got a knife? And Kevin pulled out the biggest goddamn knife you've ever seen and prepared to cut him free. But it was too big. It was too sharp. He said, hold on. Let me get my dull knife. And then he pulled out another knife that was dull and he cut him free. He cut him free from the ties that bound him, which, like most great stories or like a Greek tragedy, were self-inflicted.
What a hero.
And speaking of great stories, I gotta tell you right now, I hope to God that the Van Meter visitor gets elevated to the same level as the pantheon. That's a pretty fancy word. The pantheon of classic cryptids like Bigfoots, like myself, obviously, and Yeti, and of course the Loch Ness Monster, you know. And if for no other reason, to knock the smug look off the goddamn Mothman's face. And he's all like, oh, I got wings. I'm special. Not anymore. Not anymore, you red-eyed prick. Ha-ha. And besides, because it's a great story. It's such a good story.
This should be a movie, though. How is this not a movie?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Who would you cast?
I feel like this is an ensemble cast.
Right.
Yeah. All dudes. White dudes.
All white dudes.
Yeah.
So let's think about this. Who can I pick?
If only Hollywood had some. All white dudes to play in this movie. I can't think of a single one under the age of 40.
Probably Christian Bale, Leonardo DiCaprio,
Okay.
Brad Pitt.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All those guys are too old.
What? No.
Well, look, all these guys are like 25 to 35. All the guys you're mentioning are, we're talking 40s, 50s. You know what? But you know what? Maybe you're onto something, though. Because, dudes looked older back then,
Yeah, it was a hard life back then.
They'd be like 25 and they look like they're 50 and just haggard and life would just beat the shit out of them. Yeah. Yeah.
They're rough looking, but they're hot.
Yeah, but they're hot. Oh, you know who'd be good? Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes.
All I know is the guy loves doing period pieces.
He does.
Yeah. And I just picture him, like, he'll just be like, my character from now on is Irish. And everyone's like, why? Because I goddamn said so. He's giving me a real Ulysses Griffin feel,
Let's go with him.
Oh my God. I'm not going to lie. All I can picture now is Daniel Day-Lewis with like a twirly mustache and like a thick accent with like a straight razor, just going after the Van Meter visitor. Just slash.
I love it.
I want to see this movie.
I want to see this.
Yeah, I am. I want to see and what about this?
Uh-huh.
What if we have like oh God, what's his name? The guy from Arrested Development, the young kid, John Cera?
Michael.
Yeah, Michael Cera. He's the postmaster, and he's right because he's writing it all down.
He's trying to be cool.
Yeah, and he's writing the whole thing down. He's like, it's all from his point of view, writing the story down. Ooh, and he watches all these guys fighting. Yeah,
I can picture Jared Leto in this too.
Who's he playing? The bank guy, Clarence.
Yeah, Clarence.
Clarence, my friends call me Peter Dunn. Oh, sorry, my friends call me Peter. No.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Ulysses Griffin, the implement dealer. At the end, he goes running into the mine with a sickle in one hand and a sledgehammer in the other, just shirtless. Holy shit, look at him go.
I love it.
Just beating that goddamn thing down with a hammer.
Let's write this.
Yes.
What are we doing?
The hell are we wasting our time on this shit for? Let's write this goddamn movie. Come on.
All right, let's go.
Yes. Roll the credits.
You can find us at creepyacres.com, and you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, also YouTube, and we're on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is now called X, Threads, and we have merch at tpublic.com.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And as always, hey, keep it creepy.